Welcome to the NISM Masterclass. I'm Sashi Krishnan. I'm your host for today. Our purpose at NISM is capacity creation for the securities market ecosystem, and as part of that purpose, we sit down with the gurus of the securities markets to understand from their journey. And I'm sure we will learn a lot from the interaction that we are going to have today. And my guest today is Anuj Kumar. And Anuj is the Managing Director of Computer Age Management Services Limited. But most of us know it as CAMS, right? And I'm sure that literally every one of our viewers would have heard of CAMS. And Anuj has over 35 years experience, professional experience, and has been, I think, in leadership roles at CAMS for the last over 10 years. And CAMS was set up way back in 1988, right at the beginning of when mutual funds actually came into this country almost. And it got licensed by SEBI in 1993, if I'm not mistaken. And today, I think it's the largest registrar and transfer agency, RTA. It services funds close to 45 lakh crores. And I think 70% of the total 24 crore folios are serviced by CAMS. So welcome to this masterclass, Anuj, and thank you so much for sparing time to be with us today.
Thanks, Sashi. Very pleased to be here amongst your audience and be with you. And we'll obviously be very keen to share my experiences of the last 9 years in the industry.
So Anuj, RTAs like CAMS are the backbone of the mutual fund industry. And the services that RTAs provide are primarily, investor-focused services, distributor-focused services, and AMC-focused services in the mutual fund ecosystem. And you act as a bridge between the investor and the rest of the mutual fund ecosystem. And, the beginning of any customer's journey is actually onboarding and KYC. So let me start at the beginning and say that, though we have made huge strides in, KYC and the documentation that investors need when they onboard onto, a mutual fund, you've done CKYC, you've done video KYC, you have offline KYC, online KYC. There's still a lot of friction in that entire onboarding process, which is the beginning process. So could you give us a sense as to how you made it simpler for investors to register themselves to open mutual fund accounts?
No, absolutely. And you're right, KYC is the very first process when an investor comes in. There was a time when I came into the industry where this used to happen 70 to 80% on paper and used to take several days. There were rejections. And
so these were the pre-Aadhaar days?
These were the pre-Aadhaar days. Aadhaar got used for some time, and now, of course, it still gets used. But essentially what an investor gets to have is a proof of address, a proof of identity, and some form of verification and in-person verification. So you need to have your documents. A large part of KYC today is happening digitally. It's part of the digital journey that the AMC platforms, that CAMS, and a lot of the fintechs have brought forth. A lot of the data that is stored inside of MF folios, a lot of that is now in the KYC information itself. So over the last 6 or 7 years, it's been our attempt to make this journey as friction-free as possible. Investors get to know which documents they need to have, how much time it will take so that they don't believe that it is time-taking and they abandon the process. There used to be a demand in the industry if a person could do a KYC today and start the MF investments today. And I'm glad to share with you that we were pioneers in this area of the 10-minute KYC. Essentially what it means is that if you come to a platform and if you take a picture of yours right now and your proof of address, let's say every other detail including date of birth and father's name, we end up comparing that with your standard document. So let's say I'm comparing your face with that contained in Aadhaar. The Aadhaar picture may be 10 years earlier.
Right.
Our ability to do a high fidelity comparison and pass it as a yes has a lot of risk ingrained in the process, because if I say yes to a bad comparison, it introduces risk in the process.
Right.
If I reject 50% of the cases, it creates friction and discomfort. So pleased to say that today about between 90 to 95% of these face matches, name matches, date of birth matches are all through a smart algorithm.
Okay.
only a 5%, and this is only the digital KYC part, paper goes through a very different cycle. Only about 5 to 7% go to an operator, and some part will obviously get rejected if the face doesn't match. We have no business to say that it is matched. So I think this has come to a very, very different level. However, your point is right that can we improve it further? The answer is yes. In the hinterland where the smartphones are not of the same kind, the internet bandwidths are not of the same fidelity and strength, I think a lot more work has to be done. There remains a part of the country where paper is still relied upon, and the journey of paper, and to make sure that people have documents, I think that's a different effort by itself. But in the last 6 or 7 years, I think we've taken large leaps and large strides to bring the onboarding part to the standards it has today.
So I'm tempted to ask you a question, relating to KYC. Today, when I open a bank account, I need a KYC. Today, when I open a mutual fund account, I need to do a KYC. When I open a DMAT account, I need to do KYC. When I register as a student in NISM, I ask them to do a KYC. We've been talking, to having, centralized, uniform KYC for all processes. Is that operational today, and do you think that is something that will happen in the years to come?
So I'll tell you how this has happened. The KYC information at one time for capital markets was like a segregated box.
Correct.
Which applied to largely mutual funds, depositories, and opening a broking account. There you had to normally download data of a person, of Anuj Kumar, from UIDAI. Right. It got broadened to starting of downloading data from DigiLocker. And now it is getting broadened so that the same data can be also downloaded from CKYC.
Okay.
So it is getting broader and broader. I think a single KYC which applies to every place, which is completely reusable, is perhaps the next step. But from the citizen data perspective, it is as democratic as it could be.
So the other question I wanted to ask you on these investor services is transaction processing. And transaction processing is, I think, one of the most important things that an investor is concerned about. There's a growing volume of transactions. Today, you have close to around 5.5 crore investors in the mutual fund space. You've got 10 crore SIP accounts. You have redemption payouts that need to go out in, I think, T+1 now, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
Right?
T+1.
NFOs now need to be processed in, I think, 5 days, if I'm not mistaken. So, everybody's trying to crunch time. Everybody's trying to give the investor a better deal. But that puts a huge amount of pressure on the RTAs. So what are the kind of digital transformations that you have undergone to tackle this, sheer volume and this, low latency that is required in the entire system?
So it sometimes feels surreal, Shashi, from the time I started about 9 years back to where it is today. Just think of it this way, that if you're onboarding an investor, then the investor's KYC,
right,
the money that he brought in, and the application that he made.
Right.
And then a 1:1 correlation if he has an advisor or a distributor, so that's the fourth component. All of these have to tie in at all times.
Right.
Today, while banks give UTR numbers, a lot of them do not. Most of them have a centralized system of CBS kind of platform.
Correct.
A few of them still don't. So we've introduced a lot of innovation in terms of being able to match it. And I'll just give you an example that when money comes in, I told you about KYC and our ability to do a 10-minute KYC and face matches and name matches through smart algorithms.
Right.
When money comes in, and imagine today CAMS get, let's say, 4 million or 5 million transactions, a lot of these investors and their bank accounts are known to us, which is the easier part. But let's say there are 1 million whose bank accounts have to be established today. We'll take all the monies, we'll take the KYC and the forms from them. And in an overnight process, we will ping the banks through NPCI and the sponsor bank to establish that the bank account belongs to Anuj Kumar. Now in India, my name in the mutual fund folio could be Anuj Kumar. In the bank, it could be Anuj Kumar Srivastav.
Correct.
Our algorithm overnight, which is tonight, will decide whether these two look like the same person or not. We'll dig into the PIN code, we may dig into the date of birth, but we decide that it's the same person. And if yes, then we match the credit and give the unit, so the statement goes out the next morning before 7 o'clock. Right. And this is played out at the large volumes that I've been speaking about. Similarly, today in a year, we send about 300 crore SMSs,
right,
a crore a day. So the fidelity of an SMS, which means that, let's say 1 lakh rupee of MF balances got redeemed from your system or your account on 1st of January 24. You may come to me today in July of 25 and say, look, no SMS or email came, and this wasn't my redemption. I should have the ability to demonstrate to you that I sent the SMS, that the carrier delivered it to you, and you were not roaming outside the country and therefore the SMS bounced. So our ability to store the SMSs and the emails and to be able to retrieve and demonstrate those to you has again got to be 100% accurate. What I'm pleased to share is that when you go into these areas, whether it's a 10-minute KYC, whether it is machine-led comparison of faces and names, whether it is pinging the bank overnight to establish whether the bank account name and the folio name is the same, a lot of these are highly automated processes. The good news also is that we don't buy a lot of this technology. This is all homegrown technology. So it was important for us to create a tinkering culture in the company because a lot of these are not very sharply defined problems. The problem definition has to be picked up by the operator, and then we need to have a core group which automates it. But the good news is that all of this work has happened in the last 7 or 8 years. The fruits of all this good work, including the SMS comparison and storage and email, is what we are seeing today. That is how the industry is scaled, and that is how you hardly see complaints, you hardly see escalations, you hardly see anything in social media or in the newspapers pertaining to our industry. But I think the amount of grunt work and the amount of experimentation and getting things right that has happened behind this really needs to get the credit.
So, the RTA sits in the center of the entire MF ecosystem. So you connect multiple stakeholders, like for example, you have the investor, you have the distributor, you have the mutual fund, you have the banks, you have the payment gateways. So how do you facilitate the real-time data exchange and transaction flow between these investors? You yourself were telling me that you deal with a multiple number of banks who have got different core banking solutions. Some of them don't even have core banking solutions. So how do you sort of ensure this seamless interoperability between all these different players?
So think of it this way. I think when you look at the entities that we deal with, of course, there are banks and the payment gateways, there are custodians, there are fund accountants, there are stock exchanges, courier companies, depositories, at least those, and the people who bring in transactions, which is the advisors and the distributors.
Right.
What's happened over the last many years is that largely because the market has emerged as a 2 RTA market, collaboration has become a little more easy, which means that by themselves, custodians would think of data interchange, API structures, sandboxes in their own way. So can banks, so can payment gateways. I think what's happened is that because we have 70% of the market, our ability to influence all these people and all these entities to come together and harmonize. And harmonize is an easy English word. It is very different and very difficult to implement.
Right.
For example, some people may have a 160 or 180 character storage, and other people may not believe in that.
Right.
People will have their own security standards, their own way to protect their firewalls, etc. But the harmonization has happened. I won't say it's been easy or instant, neither easy nor instant. But we are at a stage where all of these entities talk about data in the same way. APIs have been enabled in a very large set of formats. So earlier we used to download bank statements.
Right.
Today a bank statement API is available, which means that the moment something happens in a AMC bank account, I get a ping and I know that something has happened and I should record it. The rest depends upon how we strengthen the API structure, where the implementation of the APIs happens in a few days or a few weeks. I think we've been working on that, and those standards are heading towards gold standards. But I would say the bedrock has been that the industry has completely embraced the RTA structure. Nobody does this work themselves. The RTAs, there are only 2, so it's easy for them to collaborate. And the rest of the industry has come together rather than kind of impose something which is proprietary. They have agreed to a common structure, which is very harmonious.
So you talked about so much digitization happening in this entire ecosystem. So with digitization, with so much more going online, there are going to be a large number of new kinds of threats that the system will face. So you'll have cyber attacks, you will have phishing scams, you will have deep fakes, you'll have credential thefts, I'm sure, you'll have data breaches. So how do you protect sensitive investor information, financial transactions from these kind of threats? In this context, I also wanted to ask you that things are going to get a lot more cumbersome because we're going to have the data privacy compliance that will come up with the DPDP Act. and you will be, a significant data fiduciary in that entire ecosystem. So there will be a lot more responsibility with the RTA, to ensure that these kind of things don't happen.
No, absolutely. And think of it this way, when I came into the company 9 years back, 50% of our transactions used to come on paper.
Okay.
So digital was kind of an add-on.
How much is it today?
It's over 90%.
Today 90% are digital.
Are digital, absolutely.
Okay.
Over 90% are digital. There are AMCs which are over 95% are digital.
There 95% digital.
There are digital only AMCs which do not take any paper at all. Few of them, but they don't. So this entire transition has happened in front of me. And believe you me, many streams that I've spoken about, security and privacy is a stream by itself, is a creature which has life of its own, and I'll tell you why. Like you said, this industry is based on trust. People trust their accountants, they trust the intermediaries, they trust someone in the family. And therefore, if somebody can take over, let's say, your bank account and the phone, literally they're controlling your lives. And as you know, they'll be. The fact that a phone number is your digital identity. So people understand that PAN is, Aadhaar is. But the way your SIM card gets treated, a large proportion of our population does not believe that the phone number is part of your digital identity, because phone numbers get changed, we throw away SIMs, we get plans which are cheaper, but we are not thinking of that as an integral part of ourselves. A lot of risk starts with employees themselves, because like you've heard that a lot of things go wrong with insiders. So we started this journey in about 2017-18. We're about 7 or 8 years into it. Buying tools which will manage your perimeter, will spot intruders, will make sure that phishing attacks don't happen, people are not clicking on emails they don't need to click on. You can get all those tools. But the bigger thing is cultural.
Right.
Is to make sure that you have employees who are trained, who are motivated, who take everything seriously. And discipline is not just imposed, it is also motivational, it comes from within. So it's been a long journey to bring things to the extent of where they are today. Security from a tools perspective is a very fragmented market. On a given day or in a given month, we deal with about 14 to 15 partners, and those partners haven't really built their solutions to kind of integrate. So we become the integrator. We were one of the first ones, in fact, the first to cross the 800 score on BitSight, which is a globally acclaimed scale to kind of convey the robustness of the infrastructure and security.
Okay.
But I would say that investment in tools, training of employees, building a strong team of security professionals, making sure that certifications are right, and then continuing to reinforce this again and again, making sure that we have red teaming attacks, so we are able to simulate attacks and let people think there is a threat while there is no real threat, and watch their reactions in those times. All of these things have gone into building us where we are. But it's also the fact that we can't ignore the threat outside. Some of the best brains in the world are working on penetrating other people. We are like a national asset, and therefore we understand that we are vulnerable. Whatever we do will not be enough, and therefore I think it's a question of the right amount of paranoia and the right amount of alertness in the system, which luckily we've been able to build.
So you made a very interesting comment. You said people don't realize that their telephone number is also a very important digital asset that they have.
It is.
So what about the investor? Because the investor, if he's not cognizant of this fact, then he himself maybe, as you rightly said, be changing SIMs or changing numbers. And how do you make him conscious of the fact that he needs to be as much concerned about these kind of threats as you are?
I think a lot of campaigns have happened, a lot of information has gone out, but my personal experience is that a lot of the investing population still does not believe that the phone number is that important. I think we need to continue making these campaigns, educate them, and help them understand the importance of a combination of, let's say, your account and your phone number is all it takes for anyone to penetrate the security walls. So yes, it's a continuing journey, and I think work needs to be done.
So I can't forget that 5%. You said 5% of the people still are not digital. Those transactions are still, in the physical mode. What about the security measures that you take for those kind of people?
So there, a lot of the transactions are getting authenticated through a wet signature.
Okay.
Which means it's either a check that the guy is getting in. So we have, even now, even in this date of digital, we do a a signature assessment and matching campaign. Twice in a year, there are about 400 people in the company who are authorized to match signature.
Okay.
A lot of times we get this complaint that you placed a redemption in fund A, B, C, and D. B, C, and D allowed the redemption, A did not.
Okay.
And a lot of people tell us that, look, this is placing an onerous load on that old person, let's say somebody is 75 years old. But we believe that this is a job which needs judgment, and we never let, therefore, the signature matching guy in fund A get influenced by what's happening in fund B, C, and D. It's a combination of convenience versus some bit of disruption in people's lives, but it's also these practices, Shashi, which have brought us to the level today where you hardly hear of frauds in this market. Right. And I think one of the reasons for that is that the practices are very, very foundational and strong, and we've continued to embellish them and make them stronger.
So this 5%, I'm still fascinated with this 5% number of people who still do this physically. So, you know, do you find more and more people from, you know, say tier 4, tier 5, tier 6 kind of cities, or, you know, rural semi-urban areas wanting to participate in this market, you know, using the same physical mode, or many of them have already moved into digital even in these sort of rural semi-urban areas?
So I think what's happened is that a cheap internet pack and a cheap smartphone, and there's a large market for second-hand smartphones too, like you know.
Right.
That's taking away the digital divide, which means that you will not distinguish too much between tier 1 and tier 4 in terms of digital adoption. I think some of that has to do with age groups, which means that they may be some
older
age
people
groups
adapt less,
may not be comfortable, and sometimes the brand newcomers, creation of your first account could happen physically, and after you got convinced that this thing works, you then switch to digital. Those are the two groups.
So you think that this digital divide is slowly disappearing?
It is disappearing.
I mean, because that 95% seems to indicate to me that it is disappearing, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's a very large number.
Right. You know, one part of the services that you offer investors, but you also offer a whole host of non-financial services, you know, like change in bank mandates, updation of addresses, nominee registrations. And I know you carried out a very big campaign a few years back to get nominees registered, and even the regulator has been pushing to say that, you know, let's get more and more nominees registered. So, you know, investors now are a lot more, if I may put it this way, angsty. They require, you know, real-time responses. They don't want to give you time for processing. So how do you tackle all that? I mean, because I think there are so many demands in terms of non-financial transactions also today.
That's correct. So think of it this way, that the architecture of both financial and non-financial transactions initially was seen either authentication as an OTP on a phone number that we know inside the folio, or an Aadhaar-based e-sign.
Correct.
These were the two ways that everything was getting authenticated. Financial happened first because the quantum is, let's say we do 100 crore financial transactions, we perhaps do between 1 and 2 crore non-financial. Non-financial is a small fraction. There are about 20 kind of non-financial transactions, like you said, which is change of address, change of bank account, change of name, all of those things. Everything except 2, which means wherever there is change of name, we don't allow still. And wherever there's a transmission that the first holder has passed away, we allow upload of documents, but there is some amount of paperwork that you have to do. Again, from a safety consideration, everything else is available through the non-financial.
So there are still manual touch points in the system?
Yes. Just in 2 of those cases, the balance 18 are all done through the OTP route.
Right.
And they are very fast gaining popularity. I'm sure you've heard of MF Central, which is a joint property built by the 2 RTAs. All these non-financial transactions are available there. The good thing is that you could submit the non-financial transaction once at the MF Central level, and it will be transmitted across all your MF folios where you have the same phone number, same email attached. You will be able to transmit it across. So that level of convenience has gone up. I would again kind of just remind you that this entire industry, like banking, like anything else, it has convenience at one end and it has security at the other. And whatever we've done over the last 7 or 8 years is to balance these two, that we build convenience, but we do not introduce any risk in people's lives. The good news is that 7 or 8 years is a long enough time, and the facts are there for you to see.
So the SEBI regulations require you to settle grievances in 21 days. Do you take so long to settle a grievance?
No. So what happens is that if a grievance or a complaint is about CAMS or about the AMC, it's much easier to handle. But think of it this way, that somebody submitted a physical NACH, and that NACH was for a, let's say, cooperative bank.
Right.
And it took a long time, they rejected it because of, let's say, signature mismatch. It took a long time to get cured. Or at the other hand, we had, let's say, a depository or a third party which had to solve something. Wherever it is directly at the RTA end or an AMC end, I think it's much easier to solve complaints and grievances.
Right.
But because it's a vast ecosystem, things can go wrong at a payment gateway end, at a bank, at other ends. It sometimes takes a little more time, but I would venture to say that there are hardly any cases which take 21 days.
Okay. So as a foundational duty, RTAs are involved in maintaining, detailed, accurate records of investors. All of us get our cash statements, every month, and we are able to see our, mutual fund transaction history. In fact, sometimes your zero accounts also start getting reflected out there. I mean, you maintain, a history of transactions over, I think, the entire life cycle of an individual. So, first of all, you're storing a huge amount of data. So, how does, such record keeping with such integrity must be a very intensive, need a very intensive data processing system. So, how do you manage that?
No, it does. So initially, the requirement under the regulation used to be that we need to have 2 data centers.
Right.
It became a third. And now, in the last couple of years, there's this entire concept of an A-gap data center where instant replication is not happening. So what happens is that if I have 3 data centers,
right,
and I'm replicating data instantly,
right,
you need instant replication because the next transaction is coming in. So
right,
within milliseconds, you must replicate.
Okay.
But if you're replicating transactions in milliseconds, if you have some form of malware
right,
that also get replicated within milliseconds.
Okay.
So the A-gap data center is slightly away, which you connect to the rest of the system in a few minutes,
right,
or let's say once or twice in a day, but you don't have it instantly replicated.
Okay.
So it's you could also do some of these things on the cloud. So there are 4 copies of the system.
Okay.
3 of them are certified for what's called ZDL, or zero data loss, which means they will all almost have the same copy instantly.
Okay.
I can shut the primary, and the secondary will have to have the same copy. That is how they are completely architected. Every 3 months, we have a real BCP drill happening, which means you shut the primary and you start working from out-city. Our out-city data center is in Mumbai.
Right.
So you transfer everything there. The data is anyways there. All the digital websites, all the apps, all the chatbots, all the brokers, all the banks, all the payment gateways suddenly have to start talking to a Bombay data center. This happens in minutes. And this is tested every 3 months. Now it is being tested every 3 months at 0 notice, which is an unannounced BCP drill. I can tell people 15 days in advance, they're fully prepared for it. But if I tell them at 6 in the morning that I'm going to do a drill at 7:30, get prepared, imagine someone who's got their website built by a third party. Now that guy's engineers may not even be in shift. So it's brought the system to a level of alertness. And all of this has happened over the last many years.
Right.
But that's just one aspect of it, Shashi. You talked about data storage and retrieval, which is the biggest thing. So I'll give you an example. The Debt Recovery Tribunal, for example, if they have to send a notice, it's difficult for them to send notices to 50 AMCs.
AMCs, right.
So they send a notice to us. And they say, look, do you have these PANs in your record? If yes, block them, let me know by tomorrow.
Right.
The Department of Taxes prepares the Form 26AS, bases all the tax information for all the PANs that we have,
right,
including the depositories and the other RTA. If there was any lack of fidelity in this system, any absence of pristineness, any ability for these data points not to come together, we wouldn't be where we are today. I think the good news is that all of this has happened, and like you referred to it, that these processes have not been built in a day or a month or a year. You've just got to get everything right, every small component right, so that the way your flags are kind of architected, the replication is architected, happens instantly. But today, as CAMS, as a holder of maybe upwards of 11 crore, close to 12 crore folios with balances, it's a large number of accounts. We keep the data since inception. You can go and ask for a since inception account statement right now. Let's say your first folio was made in 1998, and let's say it was made just using a moniker with Kothari Pioneer, which changed hands, the name changed, all of that. The schemes may have merged. But we will give you your account statement from 1998. We will not say that, look, you're asking for an account statement which goes all the way back 30 years. I'm going to make you wait 3 days. We don't do that. It's taken a humongous amount of investment in IT infrastructure, in our ability to retrieve in these multiple copies. And it is tested robustly every time you're seeking a CAS, every time you're seeking a 26AS,
right.
every time you get an SMS from us. But like I said, over a period of time, all of this has got perfected. And the only last thing I would say is that it is delivered as one of the cheapest cost points in the industry anywhere in the world. One of the cheapest cost points.
So Anuj, as RTAs, you also provide a whole range of service to distributors and registered investment advisors. You also enable distributors to submit transactions on behalf of their clients through multiple platforms like the BSE Star or the NMF, the NSE, or even the AMC portals directly. So how do you ensure platform compatibility among all these? Because many of these MFDs still would be relying on, I think, semi-digital modes, coming and submitting applications, etc. So how do you convert that into, digital forms?
So what happens is, like I said, about 5 to 7% of the forms are on paper, and we do the data entry and bank the physical check, do the pay and slip, etc. For everything else, it's an electronic transaction, it's an electronic or a digital payment, and most likely the KYC is also digital. Sometimes they come holding hands, and sometimes they don't come holding hands, which means I have to find a common field between them.
Okay.
Let's say it is the PAN, and then I make them hold hands, which means I then collect and do the matching and make sure that they come as one. The industry has multiple platforms. I think it's just convenient for the consumer. So if the consumer has, again, just using a name for the purpose of using a name, just for illustration, been using the Grow platform for something, right? He manages his wealth there. Now, the industry doesn't want to yank him out from there and say that you come to MF Central now, you come to the AMC platform. I think the biggest democratization principles, one of them is that you stay where you are, we will give you service where you are.
Right.
So therefore, or somebody may be with a large bank, the bank may be dealing with the BSE or NSE platform. We're not forcing you to come somewhere else. So all of them go wherever they are supposed to go. There is zero disruption, and you can transact from wherever you are. You can also move your transactions from place A to place B to place C. I just know your folio number, your PAN number, your identifier. I will give you your statements, your tax deduction statements. All of that will happen the way it's been happening. So that ability the industry has built over a period of time. The distributors need a lot more stuff. I'll just give you an example.
Right, exactly.
So for example, the commission gets computed, but they have to have faith in the fact that the computation is
right.
correct.
Yeah.
We withhold some part of the brokerage, and that may happen, let's say there are no KYC records of a particular investor.
Or if the ARN hasn't been renewed,
or the ARN has not been
I get
renewed.
a lot of people who come back to us saying, why has my ARN not been renewed?
Correct. So now what happens is that the distributor might tell us that, look, I have 1,000 accounts, 20 of them don't have a KYC record, so you did not pay me the brokerage.
Right.
If you tell me in descending order of assets which KYCs are not done, then I can optimize my effort.
Right.
Or if you can tell me how far are they from the place where I live, so if I have to make a physical trip, it's more optimum for me to make a physical trip to their houses. So today the system is architected that we are enhancing productivity at that level, which means we are saying, okay, you have a client who's got 20 lakh rupees in assets, and for your benefit, it's easier to first go to that client and get the KYC fixed and then come all the way down to a small client. Similarly, for everything else that they need, which means their sales, their entire taxation, a single GST invoice for all CAM service funds so that he doesn't have to compile GST deducted from various places to file his return. There are multiple things that are being offered to distributors. And I think that's one thing, because if they were to employ back offices and had to have a large number of people, it becomes very clunky and very costly. a lot of that effort has been yanked out of their lives so that they can focus on sales, customer service, and their relationship with the AMCs, and obviously on advisory, right? Whatever
So
they
you're
want to do.
literally the back office for every independent distributor. In short.
That's correct. And even today, believe you me, Shashi, that we do these conferences across the country, about 40 to 50 of them in a year, one almost every 10 to 15 days. And we take live feedback, and literally people come and tell us that, look, can you increase the font size in this? Or this report comes at 7:30, can you start giving it by 6:45? And we listen to it, and even if it means investment at my end, we certainly do all of that because we want them to focus on the core of the business than worry that a report is coming half an hour late.
So you also provide a whole host of services to AMCs. I know all these are AMC related services, but directly to the AMCs, you provide a whole host of services, especially on the regulatory reporting side. Like, whether they are SEBI reportings or AMFI reportings or FIU reportings, or, I'm sure there are a lot more regulators to where these AMCs will need to sort of report into. Like you have FATCA, you have AML, now the regulation itself is, very, very sort of serious business. So how do you support AMCs in this particular part of their sort of operations?
So the philosophy with which we go in is that obviously the investor and the distributor are customers. They consume services. The AMC is the paying agency, which obviously buys all of this because they need these services for their end consumers. But whether it is FATCA or anti-money laundering, or let's say building a website or an app, or
fact sheets.
Yeah, fact sheets, hastening up the communication between them and the consumers through a chatbot, data analytics, which means helping them identify a you versus industry matching. AMC may have, let's say, the number 3 ranked large cap fund, which may have number 3 rankings in 95 out of the 100 cities in the country from a net sales perspective, but in the balance 5, they may have a number 5 or a number 7 rank. So helping them analyze why is it happening, what do you need to do to climb up, building of data lakes and data repositories. So there are a number of services we do for the AMCs. And I think apart from what CAMS has done, I would also give credit to the entire industry. Like I was talking to you, that there are other cohort industries which did not go this way, which tried to build things on their own. And therefore, the effort is very, very dissipated. It's extremely expensive. They probably spend 5 times the amount of money and deploy about 5 to 10 times the number of people. The Indian asset management industry has converged on this model. And I think it's their faith and their ability to treat us as the back offices and let all the liability side operations work be done by us is also a large contributor to the success.
So you were talking about the cohort of other industries. So let me just come back to that, Anuj. So you also now have started providing services to a lot of other industries, like for example, AIFs and PMS. A lot of investor servicing, fund accounting jobs are done by you. Similarly, insurance repository services. You are a CRA for NPS. You're an account aggregator service. And all this is again around data, and I mean the way you handle data and how you organize it well. So could you just give us a sense as to many of the other services that RTAs now offer in the securities market ecosystem space and related areas?
No, sure. So I'll probably spend a little bit of time, 30 seconds on each. On AIF and PMS. AIF is the primary consuming industry. We have a 50% market share in the outsourced part of domestic AIFs. They consider RTA kind of work, but also fund accounting. With the expansion of GIFT City, there is a lot of demand for funds which are now domiciled in GIFT City itself, where the domiciliation has happened in the last 4 to 5 years. So that's become a very attractive business for us. We continue to be number 1 there. Insurance is a great emerging area where, of course, demat of insurance policies hasn't been made mandatory yet. It will happen over a period of time. Today, out of the...
But I understand LIC is now getting all its policies dematted.
So out of the about 55 crore insurance policies in the country, about under 4 crore are under demat. The rest will come under demat over a period of time. Regulatory push in terms of getting everyone to dematerialize is one way of getting there. Having the market leader signed up. So the market leader signed up in the March-April timeframe. And our estimate is that in a month or two, they will be fully active, and their digital, all the origination which is digital will start going into DMAT. The physical may still remain in paper form for some time, and then that will go. And then I think over a period of time, the legacy policies will also come. So the people were watching LIC, all the other insurance companies, and I see a very bright future for this. I would just like to mention in a minute that we have created a brand new layer of transactions on top of the EIA account. So the insurance account sits at the bottom. There are 4 licensed entities. The Bima Central is basically like a transaction aggregation account where you can get policy reminders, you can pay a premium, you can file for a claim over a period of time. A lot of people in India borrow monies to pay their next premium, so you can do lien marking. So that's a very, very interesting construct where you have an e-insurance account with CAMS Rep, and then you can start consuming Bima Central. There are 4 signed up entities. Of course, we have to get all the 50 of them in. But I think it's a fantastic start. Today, there's no single portal, unlike an MF, etc., where you can watch the surrender value of all your life insurance policies. There's nothing like that. We are endeavoring to build that. And the last I would say is account aggregator, where we got licensed.
No, you forgot to talk about the NPS, which I
will
the NPS. Definitely remind you about.
I should have done that. So we became CRAs in 2021. We are the 3rd CRA. We focused on eNPS, and we are focusing on POP, not so much on the government part.
Right.
We believe that the consciousness for retirement and retirement planning is going up in the country year by year. And NPS obviously plays a very, very strong role, and it's expanded significantly. So we expect to continue consolidating our place in the eNPS and the private sector and the POP part, and obviously we'll enter government at the right time. From an account aggregator perspective, this has been a path-breaking innovation which puts the power of consolidating data in the investor's hands, not in the manufacturer's hands. The good news is that across the spectrum of banks, depositories, mutual funds, CRAs, all of these are fully covered. Most of insurance is covered. So all of these have become FIPs, which is their financial information providers. Basically, your PAN and phone number, you can connect all your accounts where either the PAN or the phone number is seeded. You can get a statement of wealth created every day or every month. For SMEs and other large manufacturing enterprises, for their credit checks and understanding, the trends of GST versus the trends of revenue, a lot of analytics can be done. So we are very happy to be active in this area. We built the core FIP and FIU framework. We have now built the entire analytics layer on top of this so that you can do advanced analytics basis the data of the person. So that's also going in the right direction. Adoption, of course, can be much larger, but we believe that as citizens become more and more digital and understand that the power is in their hands, adoption will become even faster and faster in the years to come.
I have 2 more questions for you, Anuj. The first is on technology. So there is, a lot of new technologies that are now sort of being used widely across, RTAs, robotic process automation, agentic AI, centralized databases, and RegTech. So could you just, give us a sense as to what are these new technologies? How will they change this entire landscape in the RTA?
So both what is known as artificial intelligence and what is known as machine learning, they both help repetitive tasks get learned by the algorithm itself rather than how a human being learned them. I think that's philosophically the bedrock of how this happens. I'll just give you one example, Shashi, to make it easier. Imagine a repository of, let's say, 1 lakh different documents or 1 lakh decisions of a court or 1 lakh pieces of regulatory evidence. And let's say every day this is getting augmented by 1.
Right.
We've built engines where we can see what is the latest addition to that entire repository. We can trawl through the 1 lakh and we can give you all the conclusions. These are tasks for which every asset manager, every DP participant has dozens of people employed just to be reading the circulars and to be able to react on them. But let's say I gave you a screen and you said, look, when was the last time the Department of Taxes changed anything on NRI TDS?
Right.
You can talk to the machine. I'll give you an instant answer because we're trawling through those 1 lakh documents and giving you an answer in a minute. Similarly, if you said, when was the last time address-related rules for capital markets KYC changed?
Right.
It literally takes reading hundreds of documents. But because the algo has been trained, we will tell you, and I'm giving a hypothetical answer, that the last time this was changed was in August of 21, and we will give you a blurb saying, here is the last evidence. If you want more detail, we are able to give you more detail. A lot of this has to do with AI. Of course, there are many, many other examples, but I just wanted to give you something which we've done very recently.
Right.
So today, what this is doing is, because compliance is becoming tougher and tougher, and you brought up RegTech, it's tougher, it is more intense. So for example, as far as CAMS is concerned, if you came into one of CAM service funds with a PAN number which is 1234, but came into another fund a year later with a PAN number 1235, I can spot it instantly and drop you an email or an SMS saying, looks like you made some mistake. And if you happen to have two PAN numbers, please go to the Department of Taxes.
Right.
So all of this cannot be done manually. You know that if
Right.
you have 11 crore folios and 4 crore PANs, you can't just do it in any other way. And my guess is that in the next 2 to 3 years, a lot more will come in. Because both from a regulatory and a customer service perspective, it almost becomes essential to make the machine and the overall architecture robust, fast, fail-safe. Today, for example, we may get, there's this whole concept of barring of PANs from the securities market.
Right.
It's a PDF document. And there's also a process of unbarring of the same PANs.
Right.
Now imagine a VIP or a large businessman is part of the barred PANs today,
And then it's unbarred tomorrow.
and it is unbarred tomorrow. If I miss either the
Right.
first or the second,
Right.
I could have created a large, very, very large,
exactly.
occurrence on either side. And again, the good news is that a lot of this data extraction, matching of data, figuring out who's barred, who's unbarred, giving APIs out to the entire ecosystem. Some of that has happened, some of that is happening now. But these are just a few instances, Shashi. I think our system will have to continue doing this every day so that the ask of the regulatory framework, not just from the sector regulator, but from every other regulator across the land, can be fulfilled.
So Anuj, I had one last question. Like we at NISM, for us, investor education, financial literacy is very central to what we do. But what we do observe that, without digital literacy today, investor education and financial literacy means very little, because the very ability to transact in this market means that you have to have some level of digital literacy. And I think the RTAs are in the best position to sort of push this digital literacy. So could you tell me, how is that moving? You said 95% of everything that you do is now, done digitally, which does mean that you have done a lot of work in that. But I'm sure a lot more work needs to be done, because we are getting in more and more of the, 80 crore of Indians onto the mutual fund space. So what are those efforts that we need to do on the digital literacy side?
So I would say in this entire journey of getting to 95%, I would give the biggest credit to the digital highways which have been built in the country, which is UPI, Aadhaar, things like
Right.
that. Account aggregator now. That deserves the largest credit. The availability of cheap internet and easy access to smartphones, I think has happened. So people who are ordering online for bus tickets, train tickets, grocery, etc., trying to buy mutual funds through an online system almost comes naturally to them. They tinker and they get there. A lot of them learn from their kids because the kids are smart enough. I think what we have to do is we have to take the friction further out of a journey, because a failed journey sometimes makes him all the way back and he thinks, let me just sign a piece of paper and get done with it, and then we will see. So we have to continue taking friction. I think our ability to process, we of course, like I said, process a lot of distributor feedback. But I think we can do a far more holistic job in processing what the investors are saying, because there are crores of them, and am I exactly listening to them today? Maybe yes, maybe not. So I think that part has to go up. We have these 300 offices around the country, so there are still engagement points. It is not that everybody walks into the branch, but we utilize them for education and for kind of propagating this entire message. And I think through means like the account aggregator, once they get popularized, the next level of democracy and the next level of control that citizens will have on their data, and the belief in this digital system will go up. Remember that 5 to 7% looks small, but in absolute numbers, it's still a large number. It's a number in crores. Right. But my guess is that that journey is not going to be a very long journey. The journey which has happened in the last 8 to 10 years was the longest journey. In the next 2 to 3 years, you will find this adoption to be much faster, much less clunkier, first time right, and just easy to execute from a investor standpoint.
Thank you so much, Anuj. That was indeed a very fascinating discussion.
Thank you. Thanks, Shashi. Thank you. I enjoyed it thoroughly.